Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast. Time to hashtag everything. We talk about all the fun, crazy stories on social media. From Instagram to Facebook, Twitter to Tumblr, or probably even Friendster. Join us each week as we explore the quirky side of social media. It's the Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast.
It's simple, such a sad song. The one that we rely on to get us.
Welcome to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast, brought to you by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Staci, here with my co-host, Sarah. And today, we're going to start off with a nice but sort of not nice story, which is that Mariah Carey came out and said that she has Bipolar II disorder. I believe on, not the previous episode, but maybe the episode before, we talked about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and how he came out with his depression and how he got a lot of support on social media for, being brave enough, I guess, to come out about that. And it's nice that on the one hand, we're in a society where people feel comfortable enough about this, but at the same time, it's a little sad that we're in a society where, it's like, oh, they were so brave to come out about this thing.
Right.
Like this takes actual bravery because people might react badly about it.
Right. And that that being a celebrity sometimes makes it a little more acceptable to admit these things, which is good. I mean, that will help reduce the stigma for others. But it is sad that we do have the stigma of mental health and that we have to classify it as brave and those sorts of things. But I am glad that she has not come out. That's not
right.
What I
That's
want
not
to
what
say.
I meant either.
That she has spoken about it, and then that helps. That does help because we do sort of revere celebrities in our society, so it does help the whole mental health process. Again, not the word I want to use,
right.
But
well, and I think it's interesting because with Dwayne Johnson, it sounds like he's been having treatment for a while. But with Mariah Carey, even though she was diagnosed in 2001, she was sort of very much in denial about it and only recently decided to seek treatment, which I think is partly, again, from that stigma of, not wanting to be someone with a mental illness and all that people associate with that. She was just like, no, that's not me. I'm fine. I just, not having a good day or whatever. And I didn't really deal with it until now.
Oh, that makes me a little bit sad for her.
Right?
I mean, because that's 16 years that she has had to deal with this on her own without benefit of any sort of, medication or counseling or anything anything that's available. And not just for her, but her family, her children, they've had to witness because bipolar, can be a lot of highs and lows. And so, she does have bipolar II, which is slightly different than bipolar I.
Right. For those of you who don't know, bipolar did used to be called manic depressive.
Yes.
But it's periods of depression mixed with periods of hypomania. But the difference between bipolar II and bipolar I is bipolar II has less severe hypomania than bipolar I.
Right. So, but that's 16 years. That's a long time. So I feel a little sad about this story, actually.
Right. Like, it's like, hooray, you felt brave to come out. Oh my gosh, 16, 17 years of that by yourself without proper medical treatment. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. And, going through, because she does have children. So going through postpartum, that can, I know, exacerbate mental health issues. I know I actually have a family member who is bipolar, and being off her meds during her pregnancy was really difficult.
Oh, I imagine so.
And obviously, if she wasn't being treated, she wasn't off her meds during her pregnancy. But still, postpartum depression can be tricky enough as it is without pre-existing mental health conditions. So, wow, that's just
And I mean, those years were sort of very much up and down for Mariah, because at 2001, I think she was doing pretty well. And, you know, she had an album come out and she got married, but then sort of fell out of the public eye and then came back into the public eye, but not necessarily for the best of reasons at times. And just doing all of that, of course, in the public eye, doing all of that just with any sort of mental illness would be really, really difficult. But doing that in the public eye where people, you know, at this time, I think she did do some things that people would talked about and thought, you know, she was crazy or something, because now we know she had this mental illness and was not seeking proper treatment for it. But at the time, they didn't know that, and she was not speaking about it. So it just came off as Mariah Carey's crazy. Mariah Carey's lost her mind
so flippantly.
Yeah.
You know, and especially for, I'm not going to make this a whole huge soapbox thing, but especially it's used for women. Oh, she's just crazy.
Right.
It's so easy to dismiss so many things by just saying, oh, he or she's so crazy.
Right. And I think that must have been really, really hard for her to sort of feel like between a rock and a hard place of, okay, I know I have this mental illness, but others don't know I have this mental illness. So they're looking at my behavior and just calling me crazy. But it would be explained if I told them. But then if I told them, that brings up its whole own can of worms, because now they know I have a mental illness. So it's like, I can't tell them. Right. But at the same time, I can't explain this without telling them.
Right. I imagine it would feel like just an impossible catch-22.
Right. And I mean, I think that's how a lot of people with mental illness feel. Of it's like, especially if it's becoming obvious to people in your behavior, but they don't know why. It's like, I want to explain to you why it is I'm doing such a thing, but at the same time, if I explain it to you, then you'll look at me different because I have the mental illness. So it's like, I can't tell you, but at the same time, it's affecting my behaviors. So that's also a problem. I mean, yes, definitely.
Yes. And I just lost my train of thought, but that whole, I don't want to, you know, the way people look at you. So they might look at you differently. And so you're acting crazy, but then when you say, yes, I do have a mental disorder or, you know, mental health issues, then some people would just be like, ha, see, we told you, you know,
right. You are crazy.
You are crazy. Which, okay, no,
not really. That's not the term we use. And there's a whole other thing beyond just, you know, basic crazy that goes into this. So no, but.
And it also brings up how we both revere and vilify celebrities, how, yes, you know, we put them on this pedestal, but we're so quick to just change our opinion about them for any reason. And it does sound like she's getting a lot of good support, which it's great, but how quickly we're like, oh, this person is just amazing, I love them, and then anything can happen and we're like, they suck, they're a terrible person,
yeah,
or they're crazy, or whatever label we're using.
Well, and I think also, I'm sure we're getting more to this because of the time we live in with everything on social media, but beyond the stigma of, okay, people with mental illness are such a thing, the idea that exists certainly with certain people in America that, you know, you don't talk about certain things, you don't air your dirty laundry in public, but then that can be very lonely for someone who's dealing with mental illness, which is already, you know, causing you to not necessarily see things as they truly are, to be like, oh, I'm maybe the only person who's dealing with this, which of course, you know, somewhere probably in the back of your head that you're not, because otherwise this wouldn't be a thing that has a name and we know how to treat it if you were literally the only person. But at the same time, if it's a thing of, oh, we just don't talk about that, then it can really feel like nobody else is going through this, I'm on my own. And so I think, and that was the way a lot of people responded to Mariah Carey, of people who have the same mental disorder or something similar, of, you know, being very thankful for her for coming forward and mentioning this and giving them the courage themselves to talk about it with their family members.
And it's hard enough just being a quote unquote normal person, trying to figure out how you tell people that, you know, telling your family is one level, telling friends is another level, telling coworkers, you know, you have to figure out when and if you tell anyone what's going on with your mental health. But being in the public eye and being so scrutinized, I can't imagine trying to, again, this just makes me sad for her, because 16 years of trying to maybe not even manage it because she didn't want to believe it, but then also being in the public eye, so every action is scrutinized, and it's it just, I've said it like 6 times, but it makes me sad.
I mean, it really is. It's sort of heartbreaking to think about how long she went without even seeking treatment, let alone, announcing this to the rest of the world, but even just being willing to seek the treatment. And I think that's partly also a problem for people in the public eye, is if this is a thing, okay, fine, you don't want to tell people, that could definitely be a personal choice, but then even the ability to seek treatment, if you're seen going into a building where mental health professionals work, then that brings up this whole
right, what
storm
is she doing
of
there?
rumors and what's going on, and is she being committed or whatever. And so it's like you have to sneak around to seek treatment, or you feel like you can't even go seek treatment without starting a whole media storm.
Absolutely.
So your options feel limited as well.
Absolutely. But I am glad that she's getting the help that she needs, and that people, by and large, it sounds like, are being supportive. So that's a good use of social media, folks.
Well done, Mariah Carey. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will be talking about a much lighter and funnier story. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. You're listening to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast. And on to a slightly more lighthearted story, depending on, where you fall in the story. So several New Yorkers in the Washington Heights area called 911 because they saw what they believed to be a tiger walking around the neighborhood. But then when the police were called, they couldn't find a tiger and only found a raccoon.
Okay, so this story is, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but several people called?
Several people. Like, it wasn't just one, it was a couple of people at least. That they didn't give a specific number, but several New Yorkers called to say, hey, I saw a tiger somewhere in the Washington Heights area. And the police were called. The police looked all over. Like, they have a special emergency animal division or something. Mm-hmm. And they looked all over, and all they found was this raccoon. And so the raccoon was taken and put down, because that's evidently standard procedure, because raccoons can carry rabies.
Well, yes.
So any sort of skunks and everything that can carry rabies, they're just automatically put down.
But talk about a case of mistaken identity. Dang.
I love the reaction to this, because of course, everyone on social media was making jokes about New Yorkers and how they don't recognize animals if they're not pigeons or rats.
I can understand, okay, maybe it's dark and you confuse a raccoon for a cat. And granted, a tiger is a cat, but there's a massive size difference. Mm-hmm. There is a coloring difference.
They're both striped.
How on... But the raccoon's only striped in... Oh, God. How, New Yorkers, did you mix up a tiger and a raccoon? Was it a very small tiger? Was it a very large raccoon?
Right, and that's the other joke that came up is, wait a minute, how big are raccoons in New York? If you thought that was... Which, I mean, to be fair, because I know the other rats in New York are evidently huge.
Well, there is a lot of garbage for them to get into.
Right, so, and I mean, I saw a raccoon, and you say, it's easy to convince a raccoon Confused. Thank you. I'm confused. To confuse a raccoon for a cat. But when I lived in Portland for a while, I saw one on the way back, and that was definitely bigger than your average house cat.
Yes.
And I was slightly terrified, because it was like, 9 something at night, and I was on the street by myself. And I was like, look, if this raccoon decides it wants to attack me, it definitely has the upper hand, and I don't know how to handle this situation. Please go away.
Okay. There was a story in the Bay Area, maybe about 5 years ago. of a group of raccoons that actually, I didn't know raccoons were quite this smart. I knew they were smart,
Right.
But they worked together as a group to attack this woman. And I don't know what she did to them. I mean, I could make up all kinds of stories about this, but they worked together as a group to attack a woman in the Bay Area.
I mean, raccoons are just all sorts of sneaky and creepy and way bigger, I think, than they have any right to be.
But still not as big as a tiger.
Well, and here's the thing. On the one hand, I get all the jokes about New Yorkers and people in cities and they don't know what animals are. Haha, fine. Right. And that was one of the things someone did tweet out. It's like anyone who's not living in a city is totally laughing at this. And someone tweeted back, well, I live in San Francisco and I'm also laughing at this. But on the other hand, I am more of the idea of, my gosh, if that is a raccoon, how big are raccoons in New York? But I actually think there's a third possibility, which is maybe these people did see a tiger, but when the cops showed up, the tiger was gone. Because there is a story, actually, of back in 2003, the police were called because a man in Harlem was keeping a tiger in his apartment and got mauled by it.
Yes, actually, that happens, I think, not like every day, but more often than we think.
Random people holding things in apartments, yes.
Yes, or even just, keeping wild animals as pets that aren't necessarily the best idea for a pet because they can turn on you.
Right, and I mean, the story from 2003, there's a great picture of this police officer like rappelling down the building.
Oh, wow.
I'm not quite sure why he's rappelling, but I guess to get at the tiger, he's rappelling down the building and the tiger is like trying to maul at the window to get at him. And I'm just like, that on the one hand feels like something you don't see every day, and then on the other hand with New York, maybe there's something you see like every other day. Like it feels very believable for New York that A, someone could keep a tiger in an apartment, and B, that they would and no one would know about it until the police were called.
Right. I have actually heard other stories of large animals being kept in small apartments. Right. Not necessarily always in New York, but it seems like often in New York.
Because it's New York.
Well, yeah, it takes all kinds.
Well, and I think, whatever the Washington Heights people saw, if they thought it was a tiger, that would be really terrifying, because I remember when I was in Berkeley, there was, and this was real. This was an actual real thing. It wasn't a raccoon. It was an actual mountain lion came down to, like, I think the main street in downtown, and there were reports of, there's a mountain lion in town, and they called the police, and the mountain lion eventually went back up because, Berkeley, the campus, is sort of right on the hill with the hiking trails and the nature, so it's literally right there for it to come down. But that freaked me out for weeks afterwards.
Were we living in Berkeley at the same time? Because that happened when I was living in Berkeley.
But it freaked me out when I had morning classes in the summer. It was nice and it was foggy and I loved the fog and it was beautiful. But at the same time, I'm like, it's the morning and it's summer, so there's not a lot of people around Berkeley anyways. And it's foggy, so I can't. If I see a mountain lion, I don't really have a plan here for where I should go and what I should do because I clearly probably shouldn't run, but my first instinct would be to run, but there's not really a building I could run into right now. Crap. How do I this is not part of like emergency safety training of what do I do if I see large deadly cats on the street.
Right. When they talk to you about safety on campus,
right.
So, that doesn't usually involve large cats.
No, well, maybe
or
certain
raccoons.
Campuses, but not Berkeley's or New York's probably. But just, the fact that, and I mean, again, you got to wonder they didn't say how big this raccoon the police did eventually catch was, but if the call came in of, hey, you're on the lookout for a tiger, and they saw the raccoon and decided, oh, that must be what we're looking for, you got to imagine it was a pretty big raccoon. Mm-hmm. And maybe ferocious. I'm
impressed that there aren't blurry Bigfoot-esque type pictures that people took of the supposed tiger. Maybe they were just so freaked out that they ran, which I don't blame them, but
my first instinct.
I'm surprised that we don't have, well, no, look, this is what I saw. Does this look like a raccoon to you or whatever? But I do agree with you that maybe there was a tiger and it just was smart enough to leave before the police tracked it down.
Or like my thought is if there was a real tiger, the strange person who decided to raise this in New York probably like noticed it was out and went out and got it and took it back to wherever it came from before the police got there. Because again, to get these things to the point where usually when the stories finally break, these are really, grown adult things that have been living with these people for years, and it's only because A, they either attacked the person they were living with, or B, somehow got out and attacked somebody else. But at that point, that is a large cat. You had this in the apartment for years and years before anything went wrong? Really? Like, you did, but...
That's pretty amazing.
I mean...
Do you take the cat out to poop? Do you have a giant litter box? There's all sorts of practical questions I have.
What do you feed it?
Exactly.
Where does it sleep? Does it get exercise? And how does that work? These are way more questions.
Big cat in a tiny little New York apartment. There's no room for a cat to get exercise.
And what's the thought process behind this? Like, I don't think I could even be like a zookeeper to do this. And you're like, hey, I'm going to take this as a pet because it's not like I've ever heard of these things attacking people ever.
Yeah, unless you've been watching The Walking Dead, and the one character had a tiger, and it really helped him out in the apocalypse. But let's not just be, that's some really specific planning there, folks.
Or like, what was it, Siegfried and Roy?
Yes,
who had all the tigers for the maybe that was the original intention. Was I also want to do a magic show because that worked out so well for Siegfried and Roy?
Yeah, not so much.
Not sure, but hopefully it was not a tiger. Hopefully there are not tigers in random New York apartments, and thankfully,
I'm sure there's at least one.
Well, thankfully nobody was injured in this story. All right, we're gonna take another break, and then when we come back, there is a storm on social media about what sounds like possibly the most ridiculous thing. Stay tuned. You're listening to GSMC Social Media News Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back. You're listening to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast. Our final story for this episode is
it's all kinds of ridiculous.
It is okay. I'll just tell it to you straight, and we'll talk about it from there. So Heinz just released bottles of what they call Mayochup, a combination of ketchup and mayonnaise.
Can I just say that my best friend in third grade called this Nikki Dip? She used to make, her name was Nikki, and she used to mix together mayonnaise and ketchup for chips, and she called it Nikki Dip. So I need to contact her and let her know that
you need to file a lawsuit.
She needs to file a lawsuit.
Well, this is a ridiculous story for many reasons. So, this Mayochup is for some odd reason only currently available in the Middle East. But then Heinz put out a sort of survey of, hey, do you want us to bring Mayochup to America? Let us know. And this set everybody off because they're like, this is already a thing. This has already been a thing. And then it got into a huge argument of where was this a thing first and what is it called? Mm-hmm. So the one thing everyone seems to agree on is that Mayochup is a stupid name.
Yes. Can I just interject here and say that when I think of the Middle East and I think of food, I don't automatically jump right to ketchup and mayonnaise. So it's interesting that they've mixed them together and released this only in the Middle East. I am intrigued.
I mean, I think there's definitely condiments are used differently in different places.
Oh, absolutely.
I know for some reason in Korea, there's a thing called a condiment salad or something, which is when they brought over the traditional condiments of like pickles and relish and mustard and ketchup. Koreans didn't originally know what to do with it, so they thought this must be like something you make together as a salad, and this has now become very popular to just take all those things and put them together and eat it by itself as a salad. And I'm just like, ew.
It's both adorable and kind of gross.
And my mother was raised in the Air Force, and when she was younger, they lived in the Philippines, and someone there taught her to put ketchup on rice. Which I'm like, yeah, but
People put ketchup on all kinds of stuff.
Ketchup is, yeah.
It's pretty ubiquitous.
I personally do not like mayonnaise, but I do know a lot of people do already just mix their own Nicky Dip or whatever you want to call it. This is definitely, when I saw this, I was like, why do you need to sell this in a bottle? People totally already do this on their own.
Right, to their own, maybe some people like more mayo and less ketchup or vice versa. You're taking away their freedom of choice, Heinz.
Right. But anyways, this argument on social media has gotten really people are really proud about whatever their specific thing is. So a lot of people are saying, this already exists and it originated in Utah like 100 and something years ago. And it's called fry sauce, which, okay, fine. That actually makes kind of sense, except Utah throws me off. But fry sauce as the name, sure, I'm with that.
Okay.
But then other people are saying, no, fry sauce originated in Idaho or maybe parts of Florida or South. And then other people were like, no. This originated in Puerto Rico, and it's called mayo ketchup. Except they pronounce mayo slightly differently. I think it's mayo ketchup.
Still better than Mayochup.
Right. I mean, isn't anything better than Mayochup? So now there's this big argument over where this came from and who had it first. Other places call it salsa rosada. They call it salsa golf in Argentina. And some people...
Salsa golf? Is golf a Spanish word that I don't know about?
I don't know either, but I mean, I don't know that mayonnaise is Spanish either, so this might be them throwing it in different names for reasons. But then like other people snarky people on social media are like, yeah, Mayochup already exists. It's called Thousand Island. And
just like, there are snarky people on social media? I am shocked by this.
They were hard to find. They're few and far between on social media. Hear that sarcasm.
Yeah. I know the answer.
Yes.
Salsa golf is a cold sauce of somewhat thick consistency common in Argentina. According to legend, it was invented by Nobel laureate. I hope that's not what he got the Nobel for.
Right.
Luis Federico Leloir in the mid-1920s at a golf club. At the seaside resort Mar del Plata. And, I read this on the internet, so obviously it's
Must be true. But I mean, if that's the case, then Argentina maybe just has a higher claim on the name salsa golf just because Nobel laureate, that gives your claim some backing there.
That's right.
Ours was invented by a Nobel laureate.
Who invented yours?
Right.
Some third grader.
But oh my gosh, people feel really, really strongly about what in my mind is rather disgusting thing.
But people get upset about their condiments. I mean, I grew up in Montana and we put ranch on everything. And so like you go somewhere else and people automatically assume you want ketchup with your fries, and people from Montana are like, no, where's the ranch? Which is gross to a lot of people, but that's just how we grew up.
Yeah.
I'm not going to defend it with my life or anything. That is not a ditch I'm willing to die in, but
yeah, I am a very picky eater, so I am very much like just ketchup. I don't want mustard. I don't want pickles. I don't want mayonnaise on anything whatsoever. Just ketchup.
Miracle Whip?
Nope.
Nope.
Super picky. My sister, however, I don't know about ranch on fries, but she really does love the Round Tables ranch. Have you ever had that? That comes with like the breadsticks or the buffalo wings.
About. I'm not sure if I probably have had it at some point.
It does taste a little different from just like the ranch you buy in stores at the bottle, but she goes like crazy over this. So anytime we order Round Tables, which I think I apologize to listeners not from California because I'm not sure it exists everywhere. When I was in Santa Fe, I could not find it to save my soul. So I don't think it does. Round Tables is a pizza chain that at least exists in parts of California. But whenever we order it, she's like, okay, and don't forget to get extra ranch, to the point that now, like, they usually come in these little sauce cups, and you have to pay for.
How many do you have in the refrigerator?
We usually get like at least 4, plus this like big, like, I don't know, half-gallon one or whatever. And it's like, I think they have this written down on like our order, because they have our address just in their system, whatever. So when we call and say, you need to send it here, they're like, whatever name, our name. And they're like, oh yeah, that's us. So they have us down in their system. So I think it might just be a note.
They have a note. These people really like their ranch.
Make sure and give them the full size ladle of very much. And she'll eat it on so many different things. And I'm just like, breadsticks, sure, fine. But I'm good otherwise. I don't need a lot of things. And I can eat most things even without condiments. Like, I can eat fries without condiments. I don't require that my fries have something on them. I don't even usually, I like ketchup on my cheeseburgers, but I don't require, I do kind of require it though on a hot dog. Just because plain hot dogs, just boring.
Plain hot, yeah. Especially plain hot dog on a bun with
nothing. Yeah.
Sort of anything to moisten it up a little bit.
Right.
So, yeah. So, condiment wars.
I mean,
who invented it first? Which actually begs the question, where are you from and what is your condiment of choice? We should put a poll on social media. If you follow us on social media, if you don't, you should, first off. And you should come on social media and tell us, what is your favorite condiment? Where are you from?
And also, what do you think about Mayochup as a name?
Yes.
I mean, I hope that you all say, oh my God, that's terrible. But if you don't, please tell us why, because I'm very interested to know anyone who actually thinks Mayochup is a good name. Mm-hmm. And on that very interesting note, we're going to end for the day. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Social Media Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.